absolutely wonderful time. Excellent.
Guys, we're so excited to be here with Frank Voss, our very new published author of Beyond Burnout. We have people joining us from across the globe this evening.
Yes.
We're here in South Africa, but we have family and friends from Germany.
Australia, New Zealand. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great occasion to share this moment with you, and we're really glad that people are coming in.
And lots of time, sweat, could we say tears have gone into this?
Yes, the last few months have been excruciating and also incredible, but yeah, it's been a momentous roller coaster ride, and I'm really glad we can sit here and do this and share the book finally with the audience.
I'm very excited to be able to share it with such a diverse group of people, everybody tapping into your knowledge, like this little pool where everybody's going to come and drink from this evening and hopefully share in for many years to come with your pearls of wisdom in Beyond Burnout.
You're very kind, thank you.
Well, I think we should just give everybody a little moment to join. People will be logging on now and we can take it from there. So tell us something about yourself. Married?
Yeah, married since 1992, a good stretch, with a wonderful supportive wife, Vanessa. 2 children, a daughter in varsity, 3rd year, actuarial math student. My son in high school, grade 11 as you call it here. So no, wonderful family dynamic.
Cats?
Yeah, 4, 3 old and established, 1 new one, a bundle of joy, a great dog, and 2 coffee machines.
I was going to ask about the coffee machines. When you pointed out that you had 2 coffee machines, I realized that coffee is a very important ingredient in writing this book.
It has been, and it will continue to do so, yeah.
So let's start with, what is this book actually about?
This book is about a contribution on my side to help people that have found themselves in the position that I found myself in 7 years ago, and to offer them ways out of a situation that hasn't been necessarily of their own making, but to come to terms with what life has been throwing at them, and also to understand what has happened and how this process has happened and what we can do to deal with things. And of course the big word here is stress.
What would you say motivated you to write this book?
Yeah, the book has got a long history, I would say almost 7 years now. I think the biggest motivation was that after 20 years of being a CEO of a local subsidiary of a multinational, I had to part ways, and that came as a complete surprise. The fact that I, after a few months, couldn't quite deal with that situation was another big surprise. And I then felt really an obligation to myself to find out what had happened and to see if anybody else that would fall into that kind of process, if I could help them with what I would have had discovered.
So you would say this book was definitely born out of the boardroom, but evolved into something for a lot more people than the people who don't sit around boardroom tables.
Yeah. I think 2 things come to the fore. I think when we talk boardroom, it's really about acknowledging that one is suffering from stress, that stress is taking over one's life. And of course, there's a taboo in a boardroom that is still a much man's-dominated world. The non-acknowledgement in front of your peers, of course, leads to ignoring it yourself, not facing it yourself. And this kind of situation aggravates very quickly. And I think it can also happen to people in any walks of life, that if we can't own up to the fact that life is overwhelming us, and I think in today's COVID times it's becoming overwhelming for a lot of people, that we can't deal with this if we don't acknowledge and then seek help, be it with advice, be it with medical advice or whatever, but it needs to be addressed.
Would all the different sources of stress, so what would stress you out might not necessarily stress myself out, all the different sources of stress play a role in someone's ultimate burnout? What would different sources be?
Yeah, I think very much. We all wired differently, we all brought up differently, and I think we all have different resilience factors for stress. I think especially in the work atmosphere, we often confuse work pressure versus workload. People often complain about stress because they have too much work, and then there are people that complain about stress at work because work is so difficult. Both can be addressed, of course. I think, yeah, there are various degrees of stress, but it's really not that. It's about our ability to deal with the stress source, as in to perceive them as threats. In many instances where you are not stressed by something and I am, means that you are having a different perception, plays a different reality on it. And that, of course, in itself, in a microcosm, is the answer to stress management, and that is to change people's perceptions of what they feel as threatening and feeling as stress source to themselves, yeah.
In the journey of writing this book, you've touched on previously with me that you've done a lot of research into the self-development, and you call it looking in the mirror. Can we touch on that?
Yeah, we surely can. In my research, I focused a lot on neuroscience, the way that the mind, the brains actually work, and the impact of stress on your emotional intelligence. And as we all know, it is a bit of a buzzword today. It shouldn't be. It should have always been like that. But emotional intelligence is really our biggest life skill in the way we can function. What I've discovered in my research is that indeed there is a direct link between prolonged intensive stress that is not addressed or acknowledged and the erosion of one's emotional intelligence. Of course, for anybody that has to interact with others in a professional role or otherwise, this is a fundamental danger because emotional intelligence really is our ability to function ourselves and get on with ourselves as much as it is to interact positively with others. So, yeah, the fact that the research proves over and over again that stress has, besides the well-known physical and psychological effects that we all know, has really got this detrimental impact on emotional intelligence, and with that leadership, and going back to the boardroom, that means that good leaders can easily turn into bosses from hell. You know, we all know the bosses from hell. And I think my book wants to sound the warning right there and then. And I think if you find that your spouse is becoming more and more irritable and hard to deal with and impossible, then you must know that stress is getting the better of them, and that it goes a little bit deeper than that, and that we have to look at emotional intelligence and rebuilding thereof.
Do you think in the workplace now, like you've said, it moves on to your relationships at home and far beyond just your co-workers and employment space? Do you think that with the shift in how it was a few years ago when you were in a position of power, if you want to call it that, a position of responsibility to people below you and above you. A lot of companies are now working towards wellness programs, emotional intelligence training. What's your thoughts on coaching?
Yeah, I feel very, very powerful, very strongly, I should say, about the power of coaching. Mm-hmm. I think it has got amazing impact as it has had on me and the way that I function today versus the way I functioned many years ago. I think the fact that companies are recognizing the fact that they must look after the wellness of their employees and their leaders, that coaching is really a great instrument to bring in. We've talked earlier about employee engagement surveys. We're back in the boardroom, but it is important where these surveys are held in companies where employees can give feedback on how they view the company, how it's going, how management is, how they view their colleagues. And often these results are not favorable. And of course, it's then upon leadership to do something about it. I believe that in the past, these surveys went without assistance thereafter. In other words,
almost because it was a mandatory part of the procedure of
yeah,
employing.
Yeah, but it was a bit of pushing or putting a finger on an open wound, but not addressing the wound itself. Today we find that helping leaders that
Mentorship programs.
that have been identified as in lacking are now helped with these kind of programs, and I'm really happy to see that this is taking place more and more. Yes, very much so.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. For people who we've touched on, for people who are not in the boardroom, why should I buy this book? So I'm not a businessman, I'm not in the CEO world. Why should the everyday person buy this book?
I'm glad that you asked this question. I mean, with today's COVID and the fact that our lifestyles have changed so dramatically, I think everybody is under a lot of stress. I think that conventional do-it-yourself or help books on stress have often focused on lifestyle changes or diet or medication and what have you. I've taken it a little bit deeper and said that we must really today pay attention to who we are on the inside as much as what is coming from us on the outside.
Looking in the mirror.
Very much so. And again, the extensive research showed that if one cannot align your personal passion, your interest and your skills, regardless whether you work or whether you're at home or whatever it is, if you can't align those with what you do, you will never be happy. You will not be able to find meaning in what you do, and for that matter, not purpose. And although I know that meaning and purpose, for some people are words they don't want to hear, I think that many people's experiences, including mine, show that if you're not sure why you're doing things and why you are here, then to establish happiness or make other people happy is very, very difficult. To then also build up inside you a huge amount of stress that is going to come up sooner or later is just a given. And I think things like COVID can just be a trigger to unleash it. Yes. And this book is hopefully for everybody. It is easily written. It gives some practical advice, some things that everybody can understand because it is lying. It has the hindsight of neuroscience. It is all substantiated. It just strikes a chord, and I can only hope that it appeals to a wider audience as possible, and not just a business audience.
So Beyond Burnout has a large fundamental part of the story and the journey being your own personal one. In the book, are there actual tools where I can read up and put into my everyday life, such as time management?
Yeah, good point. I think there are indeed some practical tools, some things that one can do, and some are really easy. You've touched upon a very important one. If there's one big stressor in all our lives, is the fact that we don't have enough time, or so we think. So indeed, there are quite a few pointers on time management. I've taken it a bit further when it comes to the business environment, and you will find that in the book I'm highly critical of new technology, of telecommunications, and the fact that everybody expects us to be available 24/7. I believe that enough research findings have shown that this is detrimental to our health. The fact that we now want instant gratification because we are being taught so by social media has become a major problem when it comes to A, happiness, and B, time management.
And I think the shift in 2020 with a lot of people working from home now, this is a conversation that between co-workers and friends, everybody is saying they don't feel that they're allowed to be unplugged or disconnected because if I'm at home, what else should I be doing or could I be doing? So I think you're very right in saying this book is extremely timely on the back end of 2020, where everyone has been plugged in circumstances nobody was prepared for, and now experiencing burnout going into the holiday season, hoping to start the new year afresh. Are you saying that if we don't do something actively, like read a book, during our time off in December, that next year will just become another rat race and we'll just go around the loop again?
Look, it is very difficult to change habits, as we know, but to create a new one is much easier. The book also talks about this, of course. But I think that we're trying to bring a conscience and a new awareness to the fact that what we are doing with new technology and the fact that we now often live and work from home is just not good for us. And we need to be applying discipline more and more to how we use these fantastic tools that have been given to us. And again, in the book, I'm very critical of computers, for that matter, and computer programs and what have you, not because I don't know how to use them, but really because they draw us into the things that we shouldn't be drawn into and spend time on.
This makes me naturally feel like I want to bring up the word boundaries. Do we touch on healthy boundaries in the book and how to put them in place, or do we first look within and then see what our fundamental stresses are and what are triggering them?
Yeah, no, I do think we talk a lot about boundaries. I think it is important to know that there's only so many things that we can give attention to, and I think one of the biggest boundaries is the one that the brain sets itself, and that is that it really only likes to deal with one thing at a time. As in processing one thing at a time. Of course, we're getting millions of things hitting us all the time, but I'm just saying if you're working on a certain task, the brain really likes to focus on that and doing it uninterrupted. The fact that if we don't set boundaries when it comes to dealing with the technology that is available to us, the cell phone that's lying next to us, and so on, the brain is constantly interrupted in its thinking, and that means it constantly has to restart, which it finds tiring. So, yeah, boundaries are important, and I think the book gives us a number of pointers on how to set those boundaries and show the importance of them. You're quite right.
So a lot of good practical tips, time management, boundaries, things we can actually take from and self-teach. Could we use the word a self-help book?
I think so, and I hope people don't find this very corny. It is a self-help book. At the end of the day, this book was written out of a desire and the fact that I felt compelled to help others with what I had gone through. I had to put in a format so that indeed it can be of help to others, and I sincerely hope that it will. And again, it has been written in an approachable style and without jargon. And I really would like to think that a lot of people will enjoy reading it. Yeah.
Do you think that was your purpose when you started out on the journey of putting pen to paper and writing the book, was to help others at the end of the day to hopefully not go through the same process you did or experiences you did?
I think at first, to be brutally honest, this was a therapeutic exercise in the beginning for me, which turned into a book where I thought this information that I've learned, what I've learned about myself is happening to people all over the place. And I think that is how this book just expanded and kept growing. And has now, I think, is dealing with the subject of stress, emotional intelligence, and how to engage with others really extensively and easy accessible. I think it's just accessible.
So we would say Burnout, this book is coupled with stress and emotional intelligence. We wouldn't outweigh stress and ignore emotional intelligence in this book. Both are equally weighed out in this book.
I think so. I think it is very important that we don't see stress as our enemy. I think we all need stress. It is really, this book is trying to show you that beyond the normal things that we associate with stress, as in a burnout and let's go and take a holiday, that there's an underlying danger, which is the undermining of your emotional intelligence and the way that we can function as people. And if that's not dealt with, then it ends badly. I think the other lesson is that emotional intelligence learns us to take a different perception of our reality, and that means that we can perceive the stresses in our lives differently so that they no longer stress us. In other words, working from home can be very pleasant. Working under a demanding boss can be okay. Having a heavy workload can be something that I can do and I feel good about it. So emotional intelligence, in short, is about also changing or being able to deal with stress resilience, by shifting our perceptions of what it is that stresses us. And then we come back to the beginning of our conversation, what stresses you doesn't stress me.
Yes. So going full circle, it equips us to deal with whatever's been thrown at us, because the source of our stress is being managed fundamentally on a level because we looked in the mirror, and that's the theme throughout the whole book, you would say.
Yeah, I think you're there. The looking in the mirror that I've referred to once or twice is simply that you will know that stress is getting the better of you when the person that you see in the mirror is not the person that other people see when they face you. And that kind of mirror is really important in our lives. Coming back to coaching, coaching is very powerful in that it holds up the mirror for you and says, this is who I see and this is who you see, and can we bring the two together? Yeah. And the book likes to go there too, of course. Yeah.
Good. In what format is this book available?
Hard copy, of course, for people in South Africa, and then we've got all the online or e-book versions that will be available, so it is accessible to all.
And globally?
Globally, yes, downloadable from in this instance my website, and that can happen immediately. It's available right now.
It's available right now, so straight after our little chat, people can log on to your website.
Of course they could. They're more than welcome to. Yes.
It's an important question to ask. People are ending this year on very difficult terms. People are exhausted. People don't know how to label their emotions anymore. People are using the words frustrated, tired, burnt out, but they might not even know what those words mean. They might just be saying, I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'm burnt out. But unless we learn to label correctly, we won't be able to process correctly. So I think it's great that it's come out so close to the year that we've had on the back end. I also think it's a superb idea for a Christmas gift.
Thank you.
Maybe when we gift it to certain people, they'll have quite a conversation with us asking why we've been given this book, but I'm sure everyone can deal with that. But congratulations on your very first published book, a very long journey. I know that you've shared that it wasn't easy all the time, and that you've got to this point. We're going to add a little slide at the end of this, just so that people know where they can get it if they want to.
Okay.
I know that wasn't the purpose of why you wanted to share today, but I do think it's so important that people know and can have access to this knowledge, that you took your time to share with all of us, and hopefully we can all learn from you and not be on the back end of starting next year without dealing with everything we need to. And hopefully it's a journey, and we start looking in the mirror and start the process of what we need to do within our own lives to overcome stress and create that balance that we're all dreaming about.
Yeah. Well, if that's what the book can achieve for you, then I've achieved my goals, and it would make me very, very happy indeed. Yes, thank you.
And we're very excited to hear the international audience's reviews. Once they all have their copy, I'm sure you're going to get many phone calls and hear over time how this has also touched people, and how you being vulnerable and open to sharing your story, the taboo of the boardroom and being allowed to have stress and making it a touchable subject for so many people who aren't willing to approach it because it's not acceptable. I think that's a great step in the right direction for so many people, young and old.
Thank you. Yes.